Yeah, there's a lot to cover because we're doing Mongo today, so we'll actually have a database finally. It should be fairly new for most of you. Maybe just out of curiosity, how many of you had experience with Mongo before? So a couple of you have had experience with Mongo. That's good. It's not too bad. It is a little different than working with Postgres because it's a document storage database as opposed to a relational database. The good thing, though, is the kind of cool thing is it's JavaScript, which is so awesome. Everything we're doing is JavaScript, like I said, day one. So nothing we're doing is going to be dipping into other languages like PHP or ASP or anything like that. It's all just JavaScript, which is awesome. That should make things go kind of nice. Now, I did, hopefully, just because you guys missed Monday, and I'm probably going to do this for your class specifically every time you have a holiday, just to help you catch up, because I know that people have lives outside of school, and it's not always easy to, especially on like holidays where you're doing things with your family, and it's kind of like, well, how am I supposed to watch the lesson or do the lesson when I'm doing stuff with my family? So I can totally appreciate that, but if we want to be able to get all 14 weeks in, then unfortunately those days you guys are going to be responsible for self-learning, basically. I'll be there for support when you need it. However, what I did was I took the part 2 of the blog. This would have been Monday's class that we missed. This contains all of the files that you need in order to start today's lesson. What I would recommend is if you are behind or you're missing these files, you didn't get a chance to do the lesson plan or you didn't get a chance to watch the video, please download these, put those inside your blog project structure, and then we'll start from there. So I'll give you a few minutes to download those. Or if you have errors, I would also recommend doing that. You'll also notice, too, that these lesson file now points to an online version of this lesson. I finally pushed my lesson plan maker up to the intranet. So now it's not a PDF, it's actually an HTML page. So you can copy directly from there now, too, which means when there's code snippets, you can copy the code snippet off of there, which will be a little easier. And incidentally, if you change the number from 4 to, like if you click the link, if you change the number from 4 to 3, you'll get the 3rd lesson plan. If you do 2, you'll get the 2nd lesson plan. Incidentally, that's resource routing, by the way. All right, I'm going to set. I had a student on Thursday tell me that me walking around leads to videos sounding like I'm going in and out of ears. So I'm going to try to sit so that way the vocal kind of stays centered. The annoying thing is, though, is it means you can't really see me. All right. Yeah, that's better. All right, well, ish. Reminds me of the old video games that used to be built into tables. Way before your time. All right. Some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of you. Okay, so yeah, you're going to download that file. You're going to extract it into your directory, so wherever your directory is for that. So mine's under COMP-2068 under my projects directory, and I have a COMP-2068 Monday. So download it into that spot and just extract it there. And if you extract it, you should have a controllers folder, a routes folder, a views folder. You will have an app.js, a package.json, a README file, and all those pieces. I made sure I didn't put my hidden Git folder in here so that you would wind up with my Git folder, which would suck for you. So your Git folder should still be there. There should be no repository changes for you. You should be able to just directly push this, but we're not going to do that yet. Actually, no, that's a lie. We will be doing that in a few minutes. All right. Anybody still putting the stuff in their folder? No? All right, cool. Out of curiosity, how many of you watched the lesson and did the lesson plan? Okay, that's cool. That's a good turnout. Okay, cool. We need to open up our terminals then. PowerShells, command prompts, whatever it is we're using. We need to navigate to that directory. So cd, and if you open up Explorer, it's so much easier just to drag the folder and drop it into your command prompt All right. How big is that? I mean, that should be seeable. All right, and then hit enter. You should be in the directory. So currently we're on part 2. We want to be on part 3. So we just move those files over. If you do a git status, it's going to show you some files that have not been committed, and it's going to tell you what branch you're on. Okay. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of yours says master currently? A couple of you? Okay, so that means that you don't have the part, and that's fine. You're welcome to just push that directly to master. That's totally cool. Those of you that are on part 2, though, we're going to have to do a merge. So your first step is going to be git add, and just do git add dot and hit enter. Okay. What that's going to do is take your files and it's going to stage them for you. Then you're going to do git commit -m with a quote and add a message in. Adding part 2 or whatever git commit message you want. Just ignore my messages. It's just basically telling me, dude, you've already done this. Why are you doing this again? But yours will say something different. Or it won't actually, the git add will say nothing, but the git commit should tell you that you've committed those. All right. So step 1, before we ever push anything to Git, we always do a Git Pull, because that will take any changes that are currently in the repository and bring them down. If you don't do that, Git will actually throw an error. If there are changes live on the server, it will throw an error and tell you that your branch is behind. Next thing we want to do is a Git push, not bit push, Git push. There we go. I'm going to get an error. That's totally fine. I'll deal with that. But you guys should not get an error. You should see it. Connect to remote, compress the files, and then push them up for you. My error is because I have like 14 different Git credentials on here, and I need to connect them properly. So just give me 2 seconds. Yes, I'm using a GUI for those of you that noticed. It's just so much easier for me to fix the Git permissions in here than it is to actually do it on the stupid box. Nope. In my projects folder. All right. So everything will now be live on the server. The next step we want to do is check out master and merge our part 2 branch in. So we're going to do a git checkout master and hit enter. That's going to switch our branch over to the master branch. And then because some of you don't have this wonderful, helpful little hint, if you want to make note for a fact that you're on the correct branch, all you need to do is git status, and git status will show you what branch you're on. So mine says on branch master. If you want that handy little thing where it says git master and stuff like that, the easiest way to do it is to use the git bash shell that came with your Git installation. All right, and then the next check is we want to actually take part 2 and merge it into master. So we're going to do a git, we're going to do a git pull first just to make master up to date. And then we'll do a git merge part-o2. And then you're going to see where it fast forwards everything. You should have all these wonderful plus signs, and hopefully you don't have a conflict. And those are our 2 branches merged up. And then now we're ready to take this and push it up to our repository. So it's just git push, hit enter. It's going to go through and push it up to master. Now if you followed along with the video, that's awesome, because it's going to take this repository, it's going to push it into GitHub. That's going to trigger the hook that is currently connected to Heroku. Heroku is going to be like, yeah, I got new stuff. And then it's going to pull that information in and install your application and then restart your server, and your new version of your application will be up and live on Heroku. If you followed along with the lesson plan, it's a little different than what I did in the video. The lesson plan follows along with the Heroku way, which is where you actually push to Heroku and go through that whole process. If you did it that way, you're going to have to kind of do the same thing. What you would do is you would do all the merging stuff that we just did, but then here, instead of git push, you're going to, well, you can do git push, still do git push, because I think we all created the repository together anyway, so it's fine for it to be in two places. But you're going to do git push Heroku master and hit enter, and then that will push to your Heroku master inside that folder. I'm not going to do it because I actually have to the previous screen. I can't because I cleared it. What are you looking for? Are you looking for the git merge master?
It wasn't working for me initially. It was getting some errors, so I'm doing it
From starting?
Yeah.
What are your errors, though?
It was saying that there's no git. I don't know why, but then I had to move it.
Do git-v and make sure that you get something that looks kind of, well, actually, sorry, it's git-version.
Now I fixed that. I've like git add dot.
Yeah, so git add dot,
Yeah.
then git commit -m. So it's git commit -m with set of quotes and Hitesh's message for GitHub. Wait a minute, Brady, weren't you in Thursday's class last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't want to do the element.
That's totally cool. What's up?
Not something we can merge.
You can't access your merge. Do a git fetch.
Oh,
Git Pull and then
Do a git branch. It's because you don't have a part 2. What branch are we on? Scroll back down. Right now we're on then just do a git branch. It's just because you didn't have that repository, so it's like, I don't know what part 2 is. Yeah. All right, Hitesh, once you're done that, are you on master, Hitesh, or on part 2?
I'm doing git checkup.
Oh, you're checking out master?
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you do a git pull after that. Git merge. So you're going to do a git merge master. Or sorry, not master, git merge part 2. As long as you have a part 2 repository. Do you have a part 2 repository? Sorry, part 2 branch. Do you have a part 2 branch? Here's how you can tell whether or not you have a part 2 branch. Do git fetch, Cynthia. Okay. Once you've done the fetch, Cynthia, do a git branch, and that will tell you what branches you currently have available. So you only have part 1. So chances are you did everything on master. So then all you're going to do is just a git push. Did you already do the add and the commit part? Then you need to do git add dot. That's what I just said. Okay, and then you're going to do the git commit. You did that one? Looks like that. You're getting your permission denied. That means your credentials for your repository are broken. You actually need to reset up your user authentication with it. Let's take a look at that later. It's not super important that you have this pushed right now. Yeah. Once you're done that, you're going to do a git push. Cynthia. I think I have a sliver. I feel something weird. It's It's weird. All right.
No, 'cause you're-
Okay, we're gonna have to move forward because there's like a whole whack of this stuff we've got to do today. No, no merge. Merges is only for when you have another branch that you need to merge into the current branch, but you don't have that. You've already done everything with master, so you're fine. Yeah. You are in master. From what you told me, you are in master. Do a git status, and it will tell you that you're on the branch master, and you're good. All right, so I have done some modifications. I was going to modify the about page and the contact page, but I decided I didn't want to because I was lazy. So I modified the home page. So if you look at the lesson plan, the one huge convenience of having these lesson plans now in an HTML format is I can do cool things like give you big background images that you guys can just download directly from the lesson plan. All you have to do is right-click on it, save image as, and then save that. But there's a specific place that I want you to save this image to. Inside your project, I don't even know what project I've got open here. Yeah, that is not where I want to be. Give me 1 second just to open up Monday projects. Projects, Monday, open. All right, inside your project, we're going to create a new folder in there, and that folder is going to be called assets. Okay, and that goes at the root, so it should be in line with controllers and routes and views. So it's at the root, and it's called assets. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay. In that assets folder, we're going to create three folders. We're going to create a new folder called images, a new folder called style sheets, and a new folder called Java scripts with an S. I'm sure you can guess what's going to go in those folders. What's that? Oh, it's a mystery. I am mysterious. In the style sheets folder, I want you to create one file in there called styles.css. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's talk about asset pipelines. So in a lot of model view controller systems and a lot of frameworks, when we're dealing with things like assets, we want to be able to make sure that we can deliver the asset to the user. But we want to be able to take advantage of certain things like pre-processing languages like Sass or Less or any of those guys and have that happen on our application. The issue with pre-processing languages like Sass or Less is that they actually have to be compiled, or transpiled is the proper word. They have to be transpiled before they're delivered to the internet. And the reason is because Chrome doesn't know what the heck a Sass file is. It doesn't know what a Less file is. It doesn't matter how much it looks like CSS, it doesn't actually know what those things are. It only reads CSS. So what an asset pipeline allows us to do is it allows us to take assets like CSS files, images, and JavaScript, put them in a folder, attach them to our application, run logic against them if we want to, when we actually go to push our application. That way, when the user goes to access that particular file, it will transpile immediately into something that the browser understands and comprehends. We're going to use asset pipelines very simply. Like, we are not actually going to build out the pipeline, but we're going to follow the format and structure of an asset pipeline so you know what to recognize when you see it in the wild. So one big thing you'll notice is that our views folder, for example, would be considered the most public that we're into, right? That's basically how we're publicly delivering our views. We have to kind of do the same thing with our assets. We need a way to be able to make them publicly accessible because this assets folder currently is not. So in order to do that, we actually have to modify our app.js file to allow those assets to actually be delivered. So before we do that, let's do two steps. One, let's add some styles in here that I've already created for you. If you open up the lesson plan and you scroll up, the second code block there says assets style sheet styles.css. And you'll notice, because it looks like styles, you're going to copy that block. And I'm not going to explain the CSS just because it's not a styles class. It's not a CSS class. I mean, I have no problem explaining it, just maybe at a later time. All right, go ahead and copy that. You're going to jump back over to your IDE, and in the styles.css file we just created, you're going to paste it in place and save it. One thing you will notice, though, we're referencing a URL to an image here. We need to go get that image. The convenience is the image is just inside the lesson plan. So what you're going to do is you're going to scroll to where this big image is. You're going to right-click on it. You're going to choose Save Image As. And then we need to put that under our project folder, under Assets, and under Images. And that's where we're going to drop that file. Now, asset pipelines can do something very convenient with images. It can actually optimize the image so that it is compressed and the correct size for whatever the viewing screen is, which means you can get responsive images directly being delivered from the application, which is super cool because that gives you SEO benefits, incidentally. All right, cool. We have one more thing. We're going to actually modify our home pug. So just copy this data here that you see here currently and save it, like Command-C it, sorry. So copy it, or Control-C it if you're on Windows, sorry. I seem to ostracize Windows people, and yet you are the biggest majority in this class. I'm buying a Razer. Not like a Razer, though I do need a pretty fuzzy. But anyways, I'm buying a Razer laptop. That's my next goal. All right, jump back over to Visual Studio. Scroll to wherever we have our actual views. I believe we put that under Pages and under Home.pug. Command-A or Control-A to select everything in the page. Command-V or Control-V to paste it with our new content. Actually, I think it's the same content. Ah, cool. That's because I did part 3 and then removed the extra pieces and then pushed that up. That's why. So, anyways, cool. Awesome. So, if everything is perfect, we should be able to see this. Nope, that's not true. We can't because we actually need to register these 3 folders now with our application so our application knows where to find these things. So that leads us to the next step. We actually have to modify our app.js file in order to add the asset pipeline. So if you open up your app.js, just out of curiosity, is anybody still typing and copying and pasting and saving and stuff? No? Okay. Let's open our app.js file. So it's open. By the way I'm quickly selecting pages, I believe it's Control-P on Windows, it's Command-P on Visual, like for Mac. You can type in the beginning of a file, and it will actually list the file for you, and then you can just hit Enter, and you jump to that file immediately, which makes it super easy to move throughout your application. All right, so we need to open up app.js. So app.js, cool. Uh-oh. Are we behind? Are we behind?
Yeah.
We are behind, aren't we? This is not the correct app.js file because all this stuff was moved. Yeah, I think it's still moved. Let's just double check that we have a routes folder. We do. The pages.js file is there. Yeah, the pages.js file is there. Everything's there. Underneath that app.js, we just need to get rid of those lines that are there. That's all. So we'll just chunk those out. And then we just need to register the thing, which should be, what did I call it? Const routes equals, sorry, it's require? Yeah. /routes. Yeah, you can actually leave it out, but the reason why I do it is because it confuses people and they think it's a folder. So it just makes more sense to do it. And then it's app.use. Yeah. To that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then to the routes.
Yep.
Like that. Cool.
And then just below that you have the configuration.
Oh, for views, yeah. Is it app set? No, what is it?
Const path.
Hold on, we got a whole bunch of things here. Yeah, so it's const path. Oh, is that down?
Yeah, you have it down below.
There we go. Const path equals require path. Path is actually a core module that's already built into Node, so you don't need to install it. And then it's app.set views. Oh, right. Path.join. dir. Name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus? No.
Comma views.
Comma views? Like that? Cool.
And then app.set.
Yeah. This is the view engine?
Correct.
All right. That's cool. We also need to make sure that we have the actual Pug package, because I don't know if we do. We'll check that in a second. I'll give you guys a second to type that out. Actually, while people are typing that out, we might as well add the other 3 pieces we need. We need to actually tell it to use, we're basically setting routes. We're going to create 3 routes and point them directly to another set of folders so it can actually go find those things. And the way we do that is we do app use CSS express.static assets style sheets. And basically what that does is it tells the app, hey, when anybody goes to /CSS/whatever, you will find that under the asset style sheets, that same file. So it's like a wildcard, right? So if they go to /CSS styles.css, that will take them to asset style sheets styles.css. Is the way that works. We're going to do it again, this time for JS. .static assets JavaScript. And then I'm going to be super lazy because it's literally the same thing the 3rd time, only this time we're changing those to images. There we go. Now we have images and we have CSS. Images are fine. They'll just load in as we access them. As long as we're accessing /images/ whatever our image name is, we can access those from a public directory. The style sheet we have to actually add to our application because currently it isn't. And we want to be able to access it. So we'll need to add it to our application. Just out of curiosity, who's still typing? All right, I'll give you a few seconds. What?
On the large screen, I thought, on my screen, it looked like a Ruby, so I thought it had something to do with Ruby for the .pug.
No, it's a Pug.
But
It's funny that you say that because I thought that was a Ruby too because the Ruby looks almost the same. I apologize. I will be super fast and then I'll get the hell out of this. Yeah, I'll open my teacher assistant app.
well, besides it's on here, it honestly looked like the Ruby from...
That's the Ruby icon. So it's very similar. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, why does it like close the other workspace? That's stupid.
That's a Visual Studio here.
Yeah, I don't like that one. That one's annoying. There. Sorry about that. I'll let you finish that up. Now, because it's easy to navigate around from folder to folder, I'm going to close the sidebar so we have more real estate. Anybody still typing? No? Awesome. We have to make a couple edits. So our style sheet's in the folder, but our style sheet is not a part of our application. You'll remember from your HTML CSS class that in order to take your external style sheet and add it in, you have to actually do that link href kind of thing. We have to do the same thing. We're just going to do it in our layouts file. So if you open up main.pug, which is under views layouts. Oh, it's already there. Again, because I jumped ahead and did things. All right, so let's explain what happened. So these 2 lines here have been added. This is the link to our style sheets. notice it's going to /css styles.css and not assets stylesheets.css. And the reason why that is the case is because we have created we've created a route that basically points to where our static assets are, and our static assets are in the asset style sheets, but that's not what we're publicly serving. We're basically listening to the CSS path. They go to access whatever on the CSS path, and we deliver the file if we have it available to us. The block above that is the Bootstrap. This is Twitter's Bootstrap. We're going to use it as a framework for our application just to make things a little prettier, a little easier to do styling and settings and stuff like that. Don't type that out. I will show you a very easy location to get that from. If you go to Chrome and type in Bootstrap CDN, it's usually the top link. It's bootstrapcdn.com. You'll land on this page. This is so awesome. I love these guys. If you click this little down arrow beside, it actually gives you the link to copy in 3 different flavors: HTML, Haml, which I use for Rails, and Pug. You just simply click on it once. It immediately copies it to the clipboard. Jump over to your Visual Studio and paste it in place. And make sure you paste it above styles. The idea is that we put Bootstrap in, and then we put our custom styles in, and if we want to modify any of the Bootstrap defaults, we can, right? So, next, down at the bottom here, we have Jquery and Bootstrap. Again, we're just going to copy those links directly from the internet. So if you jump back over to this location, there's the complete JavaScript bundle. That's the one you want. Click the down arrow, choose the Pug one, make sure you've copied it. Okay? Make sure you choose complete JavaScript bundle because that gives you Popper.js, Hover.js, and something else, which we'll need later on. So, jump back over to your Visual Studio Code and paste it. It's the bottom link. Okay.
John, did you replace everything in the main with what was on in the lesson notes?
Yes, I did. Yeah, you guys don't have this. Oh, right, because if you didn't download that file block and you're starting from last week's, then you're missing some of the files. No worries. I'll open it up again here in a second. And then last but not least, this Jquery block. We might touch on Jquery very slightly just because this is a JavaScript frameworks class and it is something you will see. However, vanilla JavaScript is just as fast and just as good nowadays. And Jquery is a little bit of overkill for really no reason. However, Bootstrap unfortunately still uses Jquery, so we have to use it. So if you type in Jquery CDN, I mean, I'm literally telling you what to Google. Click on the Jquery CDN. Right here it says Jquery Core Uncompressed Minified Slim Minified under 3.x. I choose the minified version. Just click the little copy to clipboard. There's a second step. Don't paste that in because that's raw HTML and Pug doesn't understand raw HTML. The second step is another Google query. And this one is HTML to Pug. You should have an HTML to pug.com. On the left-hand side, paste your raw Pug. Oh, I must have missed a character. Wow, I missed a whole whack of stuff. Well, that was a crappy copy. Oh, God. Stop doing things. All right. Here, let's try that again. There we go. And then on the right-hand side, it will spit out the Pug. So just copy that. Hit Command-A, Command-C. Incidentally, if you have like a project you made in HTML and you want to like move it into Pug, this thing makes things really easy for you because it will convert it over to Pug. All right, jump back to your IDE and make sure you paste it above the Bootstrap. So your whole file looks like that. So I'll give you a second to paste that into place, and that will give you Bootstrap, Jquery, and our style sheet with our new styles. I will post part 3 today as well, so if you are behind, don't feel too bad. All right, anybody still pasting, copying, doing things, texting. Okay. Next step, I'm going to just jump back over to home.pug because I guess some of you don't have this info. However, it is in the lesson plan. You can just jump into the lesson plan, copy it, and paste it into place. That would be my recommended way to do it. It's under right here, the code. Extends live, just copy that and paste it into home.pug. It makes life easy. And if everything is perfect and we don't have any issues, which is never the case, but if we have no issues, you should be able to jump over to here, no daemon or npm start, depending on if you could get no daemon to work for you or not. I know some people weren't able to do that. I have an error. We will solve this error. Right now it's looking for a route that does not exist. Let's quickly solve that error. That will be result in our routes.js file. There's the blog routes. Just go ahead and delete that line if you have it. Should only be pages routes. Make sure you delete the second one down there as well. There. That's what that file should look like, routes.js. So make sure your routes.js file looks like that. The only way it won't is if you downloaded my source code. Then it won't look like that. And then once you've done that, you should be able to navigate to localhost 4000. Sorry, it's localhost :4000, not /4000. It's :4000. So it's localhost and the port number is what it is. And you should, hopefully, if everything is nice and pretty. Yep, so you can't find module pug. All right, we need to do something then. If it can't find module pug, we need to do an npm install pug. That will add pug to our package manager. Takes like not even 2 seconds to install. And then we might need to actually install, npm install just by itself because we may not have our node modules. So hit enter. And that will install any node modules we have.
Does that include Express?
It should, as long as we have Express. Which we should have Express from before. Yeah. So npm install pug if you don't have it. Even if you do have it, it's not going to break anything. It will actually update your current version. And npm install, which will install your node modules in case you deleted them before you push them up or something. All right. Anybody still going through those steps? Yep, I'll give you a second. Is it your node modules installing? Yeah, they'll take a little bit. Yeah, if you don't have the node modules folder, they take a little while because they install documentation and a whole bunch of other crap too, so it takes a bit. For the rest of you, try no daemon, see if it works. Or npm start. Oh, I've got listening on port 4000. After that, you should be able to jump over and refresh, and that's what it should look like. How do you like my super metrosexual homepage? It's super cool, isn't it? Nice flat design. It's wonders what a stupid image and some text can do for a page. This is like the go-to that everybody does. I do not have design skills. Not even a little bit. All right. Cool. Anybody get errors? Not get there? Didn't make it that far? No worries. We are going to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to help those people who have errors, couldn't get there, and then we will start again after that. All right? Because that is a good stopping point. Okay. We have so much to get over, and part of the problem I find is anytime we have to actually do installations is usually when things become the longer process, right? So if we wind up going over, no big deal. we will just put it on to next week and see what we can do next week. I think next week I have an actually shorter lesson, so if we need to move stuff over to next week, not a big deal. Don't freak out. Be totally fine. We'll be okay. Trust me. Okay. Underneath the the lesson plan, we have this section called creating an MLab account and DB and environment variables. So remember how I told you we're going to take our repositories and put them up publicly so that they'll be accessible publicly. Well, obviously, when we connect to a database, we don't want to put our database credentials into a public repository, right? That would be bad. That would be super bad. We want to be able to keep those separate. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called environment variables to keep track of our database credentials. And I will show you how to do that whole process. But first, before we do that, let's all set up an MLab account. Now, MLab is 100% free. At least it used to be 100% free. It shouldn't require a credit card. If it does, please tell me immediately because we'll have to find an alternative, though I have no idea what that's going to be. Because like AWS requires credit card setups. Everybody pretty much does. If that happens, we'll have to install a local version of Mongo, and this class will basically just be installing Mongo, the whole class. So hopefully MLab just works. So what I would like you to do, navigate to mlab.com. That will take you here. Okay. You're going to click sign up. Okay. Make sure you click sign up, not the Atlas one. Okay. Fill out your email, your first name, your last name, and your password. What you want in those spots. Not a big fan of this single password thing. I find that kind of annoying. If they're not going to at least let you reveal your password, they should give you the option for 2 passwords.
They do once you start typing.
Does it?
It says show, yeah.
Yep. That's cool. That's good user experience. That is a good user experience if they give you the reveal. If they don't give you the reveal, it's a crap user experience because if you type it wrong, you've got to go do a reset, right? Which is really annoying. So go ahead and fill that out. I am a little nervous, and I think you're going to get a different interface than me. What's that? Crud. Okay, so you're getting Atlas, then let's do this. And I guess I will do the same thing. Cool. I like the little rocket ship. That's neat. I was going to do AWS Mongo, but you have to pay for it. All right, build my first cluster. We're developing a new app. We're going to get started. All right, we're going to kind of learn this together because I haven't actually seen this interface. All right, step 1 of 5, choose your preferred cloud provider. Well, we will choose AWS just because it does make life a little easier. Oh, awesome. We get a whole bunch of different locations that we can actually choose. It would be better to choose Montreal. Oh, hold on. Hold on, it's not free.
So you're going to go north, or you're going to go...
I'm going to go North Virginia. Yeah, let's do North Virginia. All right, don't worry about the isolation or replication mode. So the cluster tier, you want the free forever tier, right? And then it's going to jump down. Additional settings, just leave that the way it is because if you choose backup, you actually get charged 50 cents for every backup, and you don't want a backup. And then your cluster name, that must be your database name. I'm assuming that's the database name. Anyways, you can call your database name COMP-2068, blog, and I'm pretty sure everybody can have the exact same database name. I don't think it matters. Oh, well, it's AWS, so it's quite likely everybody can have a different, or have the same one. Create the cluster, should say free still. Awesome, no credit cards, we have a database. I am super happy. I'll re-snapshot this at some point and
Oh, nope, nope.
post and replace the snapshots that are there.
You're a robot. You just said it. So-
Peter says he's a bot.
Oh, it asked for it didn't ask for me.
I didn't get captured either. All right. I mean, obviously you can tell because you would have seen it. All right. Cool. So we have our cluster. So currently it's actually creating the cluster for us. The cluster is essentially our database. It's weird that they call it cluster, but that's totally fine. But it's our database. In order for us to be able to connect to our database, we actually have to have a database user. So the user is it's not your credentials that you use to create your Atlas account. It's credentials that you assign directly to the database. Now the convenience of that is when you guys are creating your group projects or doing your labs, one person can create a database. You can assign user credentials to all 3 users specifically, and then they can either just read only or they can read and write, whatever permissions you want to give them. But then you don't have to give, there's never a reason for you to give your Atlas details to them. You don't need to do that. You just need to give them permission to access the database. That's it. Cool? Cool. All right. And the other thing is, too, is then you can kind of keep your own stuff secret still because you're only using the user credentials. I'm guessing, because it doesn't say, I'm guessing it's under security. Yep, it is. There's MongoDB users there underneath the security tab. We have a big thing that says create a database user because we don't have one. So I'm going to click add new user. Scram authentication. Interesting. All right, create a username. Well, I'm going to create a username called Sean McKinnon. Enter a password. I would make the password fairly difficult, right? Because this is your database. And I'm going to show you an easy place to put your password anyways. I'm going to make my password not super difficult. Actually, yeah, auto-generate works too. Yeah, I'm going to do an auto-generate. And then I'll show it, because I'll delete this user anyways, so it's not a big deal. All right, make sure you give it these privileges. Don't make it an Atlas admin, because that means they have the ability to go into your Atlas account and destroy databases and stuff, right? Don't give them that ability. They only need read and write access to any database, which is the database you're in, or only read any database. I think you can also actually modify the controls too. Anyways, I'm going to add my user. Cool. Whitelist our IP. What? All right. Wow. So you'll see there's an IP whitelist. This is going to be freaking annoying because essentially you need to whitelist any IP you are currently on. So internet, right? Everybody's computer has something called an IP address. It's what basically says it's your address. It's your location, okay? The cool thing is it's not your specific computer. It's actually the gateway IP. So it's wherever the internet is coming in or going out. So it would be technically Georgian's IP address that we're whitelisting. The way we find this wonderful IP is really easy. You literally just go to Google and type in, what's my IP? And then Google's like, cool, it's 192.139.153.37. And everybody should roughly be the same. You might be on a different node in the building, so you might have a slightly different IP, but almost everybody should be the same. I mean, how many people have that IP? Yeah, exactly. So a few of you. Okay, jump back over to security and Atlas.
Right in, if you hit add IP, you add current IP right away.
You see, he found something cool. If you click add IP and then just click add current IP, it immediately follows it in. And I'm just going to type in here, Georgian's shitty internet. And then I'm going to click confirm. And we are 60% complete, according to Atlas, and they're blocking modal here. Load sample data. Well, I don't want to do that. Connect to your cluster. Yes, I definitely want to connect to my cluster. That's cool. How do I do that? Show me. Where? Oh, cool. It's under clusters. Okay, so under overview, under clusters, once your cluster is created, click here to connect. Oh, I'm assuming that's connecting within the application. We're actually going to connect outside of that, but hopefully this gives us our details because we need our details to add to our stuff.
You just click it, it's not connected. You just pump that up.
Oh, yeah, cool. So connect your application will be the thing we'll likely be connecting with. So that's totally fine. Before we do that, actually, no, let's do that now because we'll just copy the string. Yep. This wonderful string right here, you're going to copy this string. That's so funny. You're not even going to give me the damn password? I don't remember it. It starts with a V. I don't know what the heck it was. All right, I'll just copy it. All right, cool. So I'm going to jump over to my terminal. I'm going to kill my application. There we go. It's dead. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to install a environment variable manager. So environment variables, very cool thing. Basically what an environment variable is it's a variable that lives inside your system, right? Inside your current environment that you're in. It right down to your user level though. So if you're root on your system, it's registered to root. If you have a guest account, they can't access root's environment variables. Okay? So like you can have multiple users on one computer system, but they can only access the environment variables for their user account. The convenience of environment variables is that they're only located here. They're very hard to get. They're not easily hackable. If a hacker has your environment variables, quite bluntly, you're already fucked. Because that means they're in your system, and yeah, they're going nuts in there. So environment variables are protected to your system, which is awesome. Because you're likely going to have two different sets of environment variables. One for your local development, right? So when you're connecting to your local systems, usually the way I do this class is we have a local version of Mongo, but that is such a massive headache, I'm not doing it ever again. But you would have a local version of Mongo, you would connect to your local version using the set of environment variables that you have for your local machine. Then on your server, like Heroku, you would have a set of environment variables on Heroku that do the same thing, but they're only located to Heroku. There's a node module called .env, and what .env does is it's an environment variable manager. It allows you to create a file that you exclude from your Git that you put your environment variables in. .env, when it loads up, will load your environment variables into the node application and then make them available to the node app, which is super cool because it means our credentials can live in the .env file and not in our repository where they're exposed to the world, right? So that's the whole idea. In order to do this, though, we need to install a new module. And the new module we're going to install, npm install .env. So it's .env. Now, incidentally, .env is a package that has been literally translated to so many different languages. Like we use .env in our Rails app. I've seen .env for PHP as well. .env is located for most languages, so you might even be able to find it for ASP and Java if that's your flavor. But it's very handy for managing your environment variables. And environment variables is definitely the securest way for you to manage your secure data, so to speak. One thing to note, though, this is like unencrypted text, right? So you're literally going to be pasting plain text into your environment variables. And there are more secure ways to deal with that as well, including running local databases that you connect to instead to be able to do this type of stuff. But this is very, very, I would say it's probably one of the more secure ways to manage credentials for databases. Okay, cool. Let's. So now you should have npm install .env. You should have the .env package. The next step, inside our application, I'm just going to collapse my folders because they're all wide open. Okay, at the root of our application, right? So under root.js, for example, just click New File, and you're going to call this file .env and hit Enter. Okay. One more step. Open up your .gitignore, and under the node modules, type .env and hit Save. That will exclude the .env from going into the repository. That is an extremely important step. So in that folder, or in that file, you should have node modules and .env. Okay, and anything else you may want to exclude at some point. In the .env file, we're going to create key value pairs. And the way this works is the key becomes the variable name, the value is obviously whatever the value is associated with. So the three variables that we're going to create, and generally you do this with capitals, is db_URI, which stands for the URL to connect to the actual Mongo database. Username, and I'm sure you can guess what the last one is. All of these are going to be equal to a string. And there's no semicolons, nothing like that. The db_URI is going to look like this. It's going to be in this format, MongoDB : // and then it's going to be the host, the port, and your database name. Okay? That information we need to go get from Atlas in order to fill that in. Okay? So remember the cluster connection details? That's where we're going to get that information from. So if we jump over to Atlas, I'll give you a second to finish typing that out. I love my iPhone 7 because it's like super big, but it does not fit in my pocket. And it annoys me. Makes my hip hot. It's probably radiation. All right, jump over to Google Chrome. I'm going to click the connect thing, connect to your application, and I'm going to click this little copy button. So I'll walk through that a little bit slower. I click overview, so I'm on clusters. I click connect your application, and copy. Make sure you remembered your password, because I didn't. So now I got to create another user, which is not a big deal. I mean, that's not super hard. Now I'm going to jump over to Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to paste this down here so I can grab it, okay? So I can kind of pay attention to what I'm doing here. So there's chunks of this that we're grabbing from here, right? I don't need this whole thing. I'm not sure about this particular part. I don't think I need it. What we need is we need the host and the database name. This is a really weird URL. That is super weird. Okay, so we have username, password. This must be the URL to the database. So copy that part. So the part after the @ symbol, and you're going to replace where it says host and port with that piece. Under your username will be your actual username. So it's everything after the @ symbol becomes the db_URI. So MongoDB : // and then everything after that point. I hope that's what it is. I might be wrong. And then your password will be whatever password you created. We'll find out in a second, because when we go to connect, it'll blow up in our faces. I need to create a new user, so just give me 1 second to either create a user or edit its password. Can I edit the password? I can edit the password. All right. I'm going to do a very simple one. Actually, I'm going to auto-generate, because I'm just going to remove the user anyways. There we go. Update user. Jump back over here. Password. And then I'm going to get rid of this content here. I'm hoping that is correct. We will find out very soon. All right. I'm going to actually skip the SQL versus no SQL section, and we're going to jump directly to Mongoose, because I want to connect to this and make sure that we can actually connect. So if you open up your terminal, okay, I will dock it to the right. I will Command KB this so it's on the left, so you can kind of see what was going on. All right, I'm going to first npm install Mongoose. Mongoose is known as an ODM, which stands for Object Data Mapper. And what that basically means is that it takes your database, right, and it converts all of the database collections into individual objects. And then you can turn those into models. The convenience of those models is it means you can now create your own methods on it and stuff like that, but it also gives you something called a query library, which makes querying those Mongo libraries Mongo collections, extremely easy and extremely fast. It takes a lot of the crazy query logic out and just turns it into a simple language to work with. We'll be doing quite a bit of that, so don't worry too much if you don't understand. All right, so once you do npm install mongoose, it should install the packages for you. Is anybody still waiting for the install to happen? No? Okay, cool. Next, we're going to have to go into app.js because we're going to add Mongo to app.js. And we're also going to need to add .env to app.js. Which, interestingly enough, I don't do anywhere, which is so weird. Actually, give me 1 second. I'm pretty sure it goes directly at the top of the screen, but I just want to double check. It does. Awesome. Yeah, and I would never have gotten that in a million years. So let's jump back over. At the top of the screen, we just need to include .env. And it is super important that you include .env before anything else. And the reason that is because you want the environment variables available to you right at the beginning of your application, right? So that's the first line. That's one of the only ones that really, that and express are probably the two most important lines to happen right at the beginning. Everything else can kind of be registered afterwards, so it's not really a big deal. Now, interestingly enough, we can actually connect to Mongo before we even set up the actual Express connection because it exists in its own self. Unlike PHP and MySQL, when you connect to MySQL, you close out your database connection. Mongo stays connected for the whole lifespan of the app's, your connectivity to the app. So while the user is in the application, that Mongo connection persists for their whole lifespan. However, Mongo supports 20 concurrent connections and queuing, which means that they will connect and it will queue up. If for some reason a person is latent and another person has come on and there's no more connections, they will get that connection. It will go over to them. But it will stay with 20 persistent open connections at all times, which is pretty cool. All right, so we need to actually connect to Mongo. The first thing we need to do is obviously include the library. So we're going to do const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. This setup stuff is probably the most annoying part. Once it's all set up, that's it. You don't ever do it again. Next, we're going to actually connect to the database. I'll give you a second to catch up because this happens in a few steps. All the environment variables we create become available to us through process.env. And that might seem familiar because we did that once. Does anyone remember the environment variable we accessed in like week 1? Yeah, port, exactly. Port is an environment variable that was set. It's also used by Heroku and set by Heroku. But now we've created our own environment variables and we can use those. In order to access it, we do it exactly the same way that we access them with port. We use process.env and then dot the name of whatever the environment variable is. And the one we use first in the connect argument is db Jquery. So the first piece is, where do you want to connect to? Well, we want to connect to db Jquery. The next argument that connect takes is a list of options or parameters that we want to set. So comma and a set of parentheses, or sorry, curly braces, which is an object literal, right? So we give it an object literal. In this block, we're actually going to set our authorization, so our authentication details, and one particular option that we have to set so that it does this correctly. So hit enter. We're going to type in auth, colon, and a set of parentheses beside it. User will be process.env.username in capital letters, comma, password, nope, not passrod, password, process.env.password. So that will be our authentication details. The only place I can see blowing up in this scenario will be the DB URI. We may not have that correct. Next, after auth, after the curly brace, the closing curly brace, we're going to hit comma, enter, and we're going to set a property. And the property is use new URL parser, colon, true. What the new UL, so that is to support backwards compatibility in the Mongoose Connect. They used to format the URL differently. Now it's formatted in this new way. This thing will actually parse it properly. Basically, it's just what interprets the URL. That's the command that interprets the URL. After the closing parenthesis, dot catch. This is where we're going to spit out our errors. And we learned arrow functions, so why don't we use them? We'll do it super lazy. We'll give it the argument, or the parameter, sorry, equals hashrocket console.log. Some nice dirty backticks, because I like dirty backticks. Error, colon, some nice interpolation, error. Now, the nice convenient thing about this is we're going to jump into our terminal. We're going to no daemon it, or npm start if you didn't get no daemon working. And that should spit out whatever the Mongoose error is. So what's going to happen is Mongoose is going to attempt to connect to the URI that we gave it, the URL. And if it can't connect, it's going to blow up and send back a message and tell us why it couldn't connect. It might make no sense. If that happens, we're going to take a break. I'm going to figure out what the proper URL is, and then we'll return back to this. Okay? If it works, we'll still take a break. But I'll be able to enjoy the break. All right, so let's jump over to the... Is anybody still typing that out just before I actually switch over to the node mod? Okay, cool. Switch over to your terminal. Let's make the terminal super big so we can see the error in nice big letters. No daemon. Enter. Mongo network error. Get address info. E not found. Comp. Yeah. So it couldn't actually find that connection point on port 27017, which is the default port number for Mongo. All right. So I will figure out how to connect to that in our application, and then, yeah, we'll go from there. So why don't we take a 10-minute break then? Cool. Okay, so we managed to fix the DB URI. Thank you to Tuna. Thanks, Tuna. So it turns out my glitch was just the piece I left out, the plus SRV, I shouldn't have left out. So in your .env file, beside the MongoDB, just add plus SRV. And you know what? Why don't we just make it a global thing? Change your username from DB or from username to DB underscore username and DB underscore password, and we'll just make it global so that everybody has the same issue. That way, you're not having any conflicts with your system's environment variables. Yeah, we're going to do that in a second, just letting people catch up. Okay. Anybody still typing that out? No? Cool. Let's jump over to app.js. In app.js, you need to change the .env.username to .env.db underscore username. And the password, same deal. And after that, you should be able to open up terminal and do no daemon, and it should run. Emphasis on should. Okay, mine's running. Did you create a user?
Yeah, I'm just getting a URI parameter to open URI brackets. Must be a string, but got unidentified.
Right, so Ali got that, and it turned out she created .env under assets.
So you might have just created
Your .env file, yeah, your .env file needs to be in the root of your application. Your .env, do you have it in quotes?
Yeah.
Single quotes or doubles?
Double.
Try restarting.
Oh, I fucked up. I did GM, not DB.
No worries. So what you were likely getting was undefined. And it was like, undefined is not a string.
So,
Undefined is a data
question
type.
to you is before it did the DB username or DB password, it wasn't you were saying authentication failed.
Yep.
So what was is it just making it
Because
global?
on your system, you have a you have a username that's set by your actual system, right?
Oh, okay.
That's your username. Like if you were to spit it out, it would come up with your username.
Okay.
If you created the username in Atlas the same as that username, it would probably work just fine. There'd be no issues.
Oh,
But because there's a conflict with the two environment variables.
Okay.
Incidentally, on my Mac, I don't get that issue.
Okay.
But it seems like it happens to some of the Windows users.
Oh, I'm coming, Charlie.
You're going to get address info here. Click on the .env file. Let's just make sure that's correctly formatted. No. So beside MongoDB, we need plus srd. Right there, same kind of thing.
Look at
It's not what I'm saying. Mongo's pretty good at giving you an error right away. We will find out when we try to write to Mongo if there's any further errors.
I keep getting not read property split of all.
Not read properties.
Tells me nothing.
Yeah, it's not even telling you where the error is.
No.
It's somewhere where we're calling split. I mean, for now, let's just, unless it causes an actual error with application loading, we'll ignore it. I'll figure that out. Okay, let's move a little further. So we have Mongoose. So what is Mongoose? Mongoose is an ODM that stands for Object Document Mapper. Basically, the idea is to make writing things like validation, sanitization, business logic, and other boilerplate code a lot simpler and faster because the ODM actually takes care of that for you. The other great thing about Mongoose is Mongo itself, it has data types, but it doesn't force data types. It also doesn't force what you write into your collection. So unlike a relational database where you have to actually set the tables and their fields, in Mongoose, you just write directly to Mongoose whatever the hell you want, and it immediately just creates that collection and that structure with that document. That's why people love document storage, because if you're not totally sure what the document is going to look like from record to record, it doesn't matter because you just insert it and it just takes it. It's the sluttiest database there is. But it is the super awesomest database. It's very important to understand that it's not an idea of I only will use SQL or I only will use NoSQL. There are reasons why we use both systems, right? NoSQL is not the 100% answer, and SQL is not the 100% answer. For example, in our system at GShift, we have we do collections from Google. Basically, we do what's called SERP collections. So a SERP is a search engine result page. So when you go to Google, right, any Google, I'm just going to type my favorite one, boo, whatever. This page is known as a SERP page. It's a search engine result page. And each one of these links are SERPs. They're actually search engine results. What they actually represent to people who follow SEO is, hey, what number is my website listed under? Am I the top listing? Am I the second listing? Stuff like that. So we scrape that stuff for people using keywords they give us, search engine locations and stuff like that. Because these pages, their structure can change from time to time, it doesn't make sense for us to take this and dump it into a Postgres database because Postgres is structural. It maintains this rigidity that it doesn't work for these SERP pages. So what we do instead, we gut these pages and we drop them into Mongo. And we just load them, just dump them into Mongo. Roughly a terabyte a day. Terabyte every single day of SERP collection goes into Mongo. We have a petabyte of data, actually. So when we go through this information, we have a thing called a grinder that actually takes the result set out of Mongo, grinds the result sets, and then shoves that into our rigid Postgres where we can actually now query that and give that to our front end for things like charting and reports and stuff like that. But we use both. We use Mongo and we also use PostgreSQL. And the Postgres is simple SQL. It's just SQL. Not really much different than MySQL. And then in addition to that, we also use Dynamo. And we use Dynamo because Dynamo gives us a performance boost over Postgres or MongoDB, and it is also a document storage. It's a flat file storage, but it has some of the rigidities that a SQL database has. So there isn't always just a one answer. It's the best tool for the job kind of idea, right? Use the appropriate tool for what you're doing. That's what makes sense. Yeah, go cool.
I also came through something called Redis. Is it
Yep.
similar to Mongo?
Yeah, so we use Redis too. Redis, I call it a dumb database because Redis takes key value pairs. That's it. That's all it can do. It doesn't create relationships. There's no such thing as a relationship. You don't store massive documents into it because it's not what it's made for. Redis is literally made to take one key, one value. So what we use Redis for is jobs. So these SERPs, right? We have all these different search engines and we have all these different keywords. And each one of those gets shoved into Redis as a job. And then we have a job runner that actually pulls the job off, connects to a proxy server, and then goes and collects that keyword, brings it back, dumps it into Mongo, and then gets ground. And that happens for 500,000 plus keywords or something like that per day. So bi-daily. But we do regular ones on day one and we do mobile on day two. But yeah. Yeah, actually I can show you something neat if I have access to it. I don't ever access from this computer, so I might not be able to get in. I should be able to, though. Oh, yeah, I can. Oh, maybe I can't. Oh, I might not be able to. I apologize in advance if I can't. Is that the magic keyword? Yay, we're in. All right. This is our Librato. This actually manages and monitors our application. And this is our Google scraper. Stop jumping around. This is our Google scraper. So here's our percentage complete. That 100 is 100%. That's based on 20,000 keywords in total, 1,000 responses. This queue size should be 0, which means that worked well. Captcha types, captcha percentage, because we also measure captchas. So captchas are like, you know when you go to Google and you get the thing that comes up and says, are you a bot? So we actually capture that screen. We send it off to Russia, who sends it off to, it's a third world nation. I just can't remember the name of it. But anyways, there's like literally a warehouse of people who take a look at my captcha screen, type the captcha in, hit enter, and then we fill the captcha in for them. And the worst part about it, it fluctuates like a stock. So sometimes that captcha costs 0.1 cent. Sometimes it can be as high as $1. It varies from time to time. We don't like captchas. Captchas are bad because it gets expensive after a while. But yeah, that's us measuring what we do. So again, like I said, there's the one tool for a job is not a case. It's always whatever the specific tool is necessary that you need for that job. Cool. All right, let's move on. I digress a bit. So we've got Mongoose. Mongoose is a flat file storage. Mongoose isn't a flat file storage. MongoDB is a flat file storage. It's a document store. It literally just takes JSON objects, and that's what we write to it. It does have a database, right? So you do start with that part. You have the database part. And then you do get, I have a thing for it here, a table. I wrote you a little table to help you kind of keep this in mind. So SQL is on the right, Mongo is on the left. This will help you with the terminology. This is basically how the translation works. So a Mongo database and a SQL database, both databases. That's totally fine. Collection is roughly the same as a table, right? So when you think of a table in a relational database, they're the same thing. Table and collection, they roughly equal the same thing. Record, right? So when you write a single line of data in a relational database, that would be the equivalent to writing a document inside of Mongo. And then field, in SQL we call them fields. In Mongo we call them attributes or properties, right? Because they're JSON objects. So a lot of people get confused and are like, well, Mongo, you know, it's not a relational database. We don't do relationships. There's no relationships in Mongo. And that is not true. Relationships, creating relationships between one table and another is still something you will do in Mongo because you'll have to. Like there will be times where you want, you know, a particular data to be associated with another chunk of data, right? So if I have a user and that user has several grades and I want to be able to create that association, I can't just make them totally separated, right? So I do have the ability and power to do relationships. The difference is, though, is if I want to make like a subset of data only available to that one particular collection, I can actually nest it as a whole collection inside of a collection, which is pretty cool. Or I can create an association to another collection and then pull both those at the same time and create a merge with those as well. Anyways, we're going to be doing some of that stuff. Today we're actually going to create something very simple. We're just going to create a blog. We're not going to have an author yet or anything like that. We'll do the author next week, and we'll create an association to the author next week. But this week we'll just do a simple Mongoose. We'll do a simple Mongo collection with one document in it. Now, the other thing to understand about Mongoose is Mongoose will actually help us write our creates, our reads, and stuff a lot easier because it gives us a query language to work with and it makes things a lot simpler. But one way that we use Mongoose is by creating something called a model. So before we get started, we are going to need to create a new folder in our application. I know we're getting so many folders in our application. I think this is actually the last folder we have to create. I don't think we have to create any more after this. This folder is going to be called, actually that's a lie because we have React next semester, or next term, so we will be creating a lot of folders then. But for the node part, this is going to be called models. And we're going to create that in there. And then inside that folder, we're only going to create one model for now. And it's going to be called blog, singular, right? Singular, blog.js. And the reason why it's singular is because the model is a representation of a single document at any point. Okay? So whenever we refer to it, we're referring to it as one particular thing. And that's important to kind of understand because the methods that we have available to us, any of the validations we have available to us, they're on a singular record. Okay, cool. So we have our blog.js. We've done our connection. So remember when we created the pages resource, right? We had our pages resource. We pretended that we had like a pages kind of model resource thing. The thing we needed to be able to create the actions for our routes was called a what? Do you remember? So our routes always point to an action that's stored where? What file do we store our actions in? That handles the route stuff. What's that? Yeah, controller. So in our controllers, we're going to create a new controller in there as well called blogs with an S, controller, just a single controller, .js. We're going to do these all at once, so all the files we need for our resource are open at one point. So I have the blog model, I have the controller. How does my user access my controller actions? So the user's in the client, how do they get to the controller action? Routes, exactly. So we use, no, not views. Views are what they see, but the actual access point for them to get to that set of views is done through the routes, right? So we're going to need a route. So under routes, we're going to create a new file, and it will be called blogs.js. So we have a blog.js model, a blogs controller, and a blogs.js route file. Now, GoCool did bring up the point that we need views for our user and be able to interact with our blogs, right? So let's think about the things that we want to create today. I only want to be able to create a new blog and be able to show an existing blog and show a list of all the blogs. Does anybody remember what 3 views I will need to do that? First of all, what view do I need to create a new blog? How do you register for a user account? Think of that. Right? You fill in a what? A form. So we need a form, right? So I need a, what kind of view do I need? What's that view's name? Do you remember our resource routes? Yeah, exactly. New. Awesome. So I need a new view, right? That will be where our model is. Make sure I put down the right fingers. All right, next one. I want to show all of the blogs that we currently have available. What view is that? Display?
Show.
List is close. Starts with an I. Index. And then I want to see one blog, Adrian. Show. Exactly. So we need 3 views. We need new, index, and show. So under views, we're going to create a new folder. And we'll do this with every resource. A new folder under views called blogs. Okay. And in that folder, we'll create our 3 views. New file. The first one will be new.pug. The second one will be index.pug. And then the third file will be show.pug. So we have literally all the things we need for our resources. We have blog.js for our resources. We have blogscontroller.js for our resources. Blogs.js, which is our routing file. We have new.pug, index.pug, and show.pug. So the order of that we create these certain things in, the best way to do this so that our app isn't constantly crashing is to do it with the detached objects first. So what I like to do, I like to start in blogscontroller.js and create my actions. And my actions are very easy. The first action I want to create, because I want to create a new blog, because I don't have any, I can't index any, right? I can't show any. So I want to create a new one. So the first action I'm going to create is exports.new. And that will be equal to a function. The function will have a request and a response object. And I'm using arrow functions here in case you're curious. In case you're like, what the heck is that? Okay. And I'm just going to stub these out. The next one I'm going to create is exports dot index. And it will also be equal to request and response. And then exports.show, which will also be equal to request response passed into the function. And then there's one more that does not have a view. This is a controller action that doesn't have a view, but is super important. So let's think about this for a second. New shows the form, right? Gives us a form. News, the controller action new, that's all it's going to do. It's just literally going to send back a form, like one line of code. I need somewhere to submit to. Does anybody remember what that controller action will be? Post is the method, yeah. Not save. Starts with a C. Create, yeah. So we're going to do exports.create equals request and response. And bam. So we have our 3 views, new, index, and show, right? And these controller actions will be responsible for actually rendering those views. Then we have our create. Create will still deliver a view, but instead of actually rendering a view, it will redirect to a view. We'll likely redirect to index, which makes sense. When you create the file, we just redirect back to the index so that you can see your new blog post. We're not going to actually go ahead and save that file. We're not going to put the logic in here yet. We'll do this in steps, right? The next step we want to do is create the routes, because now that we have the controller actions, even though there's no data in them, we can still route to them without breaking our application. So what we want to do is open up our blogs.js routing file, right? And, sorry, Ali, were you still writing those out? Okay. Open up your blogs.js file, and we're going to add in our blogs. Now, what's cool is if you don't remember the logic, we can literally jump over to pages.js, hit Command-A, Command-C, or Control-A, Control-C if you're on Windows, right? Under pages.js under the routes. Copy that logic. Jump over to blogs.js and paste it in place. because most of the logic will be very similar. And the pieces we're going to change out, pages controller will now become blogs controller. Make sure you also use the correct name for the where the controller is located. All right. And then these routes that we have in here are wrong, so I'm going to delete 3 of them right off the bat. I'm going to change this one to new. And my route will actually be router.getNew, like that. So when the user goes to new, it's going to point to the pages, to the blogs controller new. So I'm going to change that. Yeah, blogs controller new. I want the user to be able to get to the index page, so I need a route for it. Same idea, except for I'm going to erase new, so it's just the slash, and I'm going to change it to point to index. These are both gets, because I'm returning a view. I'm not doing any mutation of data. I'm going to duplicate that one as well. And this time I'm going to use something called a bound parameter. What a bound parameter does is it captures the user's data when they type it into the URL. So if the user types blogs/1234, I can use a bound parameter to grab the 1234, send it as part of my request as a parameter in my request, which means now my request can go look up 1234 and return back the appropriate information. The way I do bound parameters is I use a colon to signify that I'm doing a bound parameter, and then I give my parameter a name. And it's like any variable name that you want. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to call mine ID. Just makes sense. And that's going to point on the blogs controller to the show action. Show will show a specific blog post. That's its purpose. Duplicate one more time. This time we're going to make a few different changes. Oh, actually, before we do that, let me just explain one other thing. Because this bound parameter is there, you do stand the potential of a conflict. See how we have new? Unfortunately, in Mongo databases, IDs are not numeric. They're actually an alphanumeric string, and it's randomly generated by the Mongo database. They're not in a sequential, right? So like, you write 2 records, they aren't necessarily going to map out sequentially. This is not how it works. So in order to make sure that when we type in new, it doesn't get picked up by the bound parameter, this order of us defining our routes is important, okay? So basically what will happen is when we type in a URL, it's going to check here first, then it will check this route to see if it matches, then it will check this route. So it will do it in the order of operations, okay? So it's not coincidental that new is first, that is important. All right, so our last route is not a GET request because we want to actually create a post. So what would it be? Yeah, exactly. Post. Now what's cool is we can actually post directly to slash. Yes, both this route and the index route look identical. All we have to do, point it to create. And the reason why it won't get picked up is because not only is it looking at the path the person has requested, it is also looking at the HTTP method that they used to make the request. So post is not the same as get, even though they're pointing to the same path. In PHP, that would be a cluster, right? Because you would actually have to listen for one of those 2 parameters because both come through every time. All right, and then we just have to export, so all of that is the same. So that is our route file in a nutshell. We'll be adding more to it next week when we add update and edit and delete. We'll add 3 more routes to that file. Okay, so we're almost done with the routing. We just need to remember to add this to our main routes.js file. Remember we added pages.js there? Now we need to add the blog routes to the routes.js file. So if you open up the routes.js file, looks like this. You're going to add 2 lines in here. I'm going to change this from importing page routes to importing routes. I'm going to duplicate the page route line and change that to blog routes and point it at blogs. And then I'm going to duplicate the app use command, change this to blog routes as well. Now, I would have a conflict if I left this way, because page routes would actually pick it up and everything would go forward. I need to actually take my resource and put it under a namespace, right? And I think the easiest way to do that is do app.use and the name of the resource. So that's what I like to do. I'm going to put blogs in here. The way that's going to work now going forward is in the blogs routing file, every one of those routes is going to be prefixed with /blogs. So it'll be /blogs new, /blogs /blogs :id /blogs. Just that's it, but posting. Right? So that's the way it works. Yeah.
For the show thing, so not just do /show/:id, make it different.
We could. So the only reason why I don't do that is because I want to mimic resource routing in other frameworks. This is the easiest way to mimic those, but that is definitely a way to get around it. If you did that, then you could literally put the route wherever you want in order. The other way to do it is using regular expression bound parameters, where you can actually use the regular expression to pick up the data type of the bound parameter, which means you can kind of like say, well, if it's 32 characters long, then it's likely the ID for the collection, so blah, 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 right? So you can get kind of specific. Bound parameters do give you a lot of flexibility. I just find this is the simplest way to kind of show it, while still kind of showing you other MVC systems at the same time. But yeah, you have complete control over how you do your routes, so you're not married to those, so just arguments at the end of the day. All right, cool. So under, I don't know why I just switched files all of a sudden. Under there, that's it. So now we have all of our 4 routes for those paths. The next step we want to do is actually create the Mongoose model so that we can actually create up our connections inside our controller. The Mongoose model is quite large. Do we have time? Yeah, we've got time. So let's do that next. So we'll open up blog.js under models, right? So make sure it's models, blog.js. So Mongoose actually makes creating the models pretty simple. It gives us the ability to define our attributes, which are our fields, right? The data types that we actually expect for those fields, right? So just like in a relational database where you say name has to be a var of 255 characters, in Mongoose, you can do the same kind of idea. You can say name has to be a string of X number of characters if you want to. Or you can leave things out. You don't have to necessarily put all that restriction in. You only need to add the amount of rigidity that you absolutely want. So the first step is actually to require Mongoose. Once we've done that, the next step is to define something called a schema. The schema, you can think of it like a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint that basically tells Mongoose how to interpret the collection that is in the Mongo database. That's essentially what it is. They're pretty easy to make, and after you've made a few of them, and we'll be making a bunch of them, you'll get pretty used to the structure. At the end of the day, though, Mongoose is only one ODM that exists. There is a lot of different ODMs out there. Some mimic Active Record, some mimic whatever it is that Laravel uses again. I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, those are just different patterns. You got to get used to looking at documentation, obviously. So if there's something that I don't teach in class that you're trying to attempt to do, I did leave the link to Mongoose's documentation. I would look under the Mongoose documentation if you're missing that piece. All right, so let's go ahead and create a blog model. So like I said, the first step, require Mongoose. Const. I'm going to store it under a variable called Mongoose, because that just makes sense. Require Mongoose. Mongo loves Mongo. Out of curiosity, anybody in here seen Blazing Saddles before? No?
What I was like.
Do you remember Mongo? He was like this big guy, and then he says this like really deep existential comment. He goes, Mongo, pawn in game of life. Anyways, you should watch Blazing Saddles. It's hilarious. All right. So now we need the schema, and we're going to set it to a variable. I'm going to call it blog schema. And again, these are just naming conventions, to be quite frank, that I just came up with. So you can do whatever really you want, but I find following these conventions keeps things nice and consistent and makes it easy to find everything. And so we're going to make a new mongoose.schema object. So that will actually instantiate a brand new mongoose schema. That method actually takes an object as an argument. So we're going to give it an object. Bam. And the object is going to contain our actual schema. So this is like a lot of layers. It's more complex than it seems like it is. The first piece is the name of our attributes, or the name of your fields, if you want to think of it from a SQL perspective, right? So let's think about a blog, right? Blogs have tons of different fields that are available, but the most basic pieces that we would need would be a title, right, for the blog, content, obviously, because you want to be able to type something into it, and status, right? Is it draft or is it published, right? Because you don't want to show it too early. Yes? The ID gets created for you automatically. That's the wonderful thing about Mongoose. It actually generates, actually that's the wonderful thing about Mongo. Mongo immediately generates an identifier, a unique identifier for your collection. It's very important to remember, though, these are not sequential. They are not in a numerical fashion. They are alphanumeric. They look closer to like a token, like an SSL token or something like that. They're just a 32 key string. Yeah, so you can't rely on them by any means. Some people even override them and actually change them out to something more logical. Okay, so we're going to do title, colon, content, make it equal to an object, and status, which will also be equal to an object. Notice this just looks like an object literal, right? Remember that from JavaScript class? It's just an object literal with some properties, and those properties happen to have object literals as values. No magic here. It is all just JavaScript at the end of the day. So I did this deliberately, right, to show you the most basic structure here. And you can actually leave this like this, and this is a valid schema. That's perfectly valid. And you can jam whatever the hell you want into those fields at that point, and it will just accept it. It doesn't care. It's not picky, right? But obviously, we want to take advantage of the fact that we can sanitize our data by forcing data typing. We can validate our data by actually adding validations directly into our schema. And we can also do some creative kind of construction, like creating some things like enums and stuff like that, which we're going to do. So under title, let's do the first part. I want to force data typing. So I use the type property, and I give it a data type object. So the data type object, I'm going to tell it, it's a string. So you remember all the data types in JavaScript? Who actually remembers all the data types in JavaScript, out of curiosity? Anybody? Okay, give me one. So string. Yeah, give me another one. That isn't that one. Boolean. Yeah, Boolean. So JavaScript doesn't have floats, doubles. It puts them all under number. Yeah, so number, right? Also objects, right? They're a data type in JavaScript. Also, what's that? Arrays, yeah, arrays as well. And then also null and undefined. They're also data types as well. Plus, ones you just make up, right? So if you create a new object, you can actually assign that, which is cool because that's where it comes into play where you want to use a nested schema. So if you create another schema, you can actually assign that schema as the data type. And then it has to follow that structure. Kind of neat. More C++ish, so I would say. All right, so under type, we're going to do a comma. And I mean, you can't have a blog without a title. That doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you have a blog post without a title? So we're going to add a little bit of validation. This is very simplistic validation. We will cover validation more in depth at a later date. But for now, we're just going to do required and true, which basically says you have to have a title. You cannot create a valid document without one. And what will actually occur if they attempt to create a document without a title, Mongoose will blow up and send back an error response saying you cannot have a document without a title. And we can catch that and deal with it properly and all the rest of it. All right, so that's it for title. Content, I don't care if they've actually added any content because they might be building a draft or something like that. They have to have at least a title, but they don't necessarily need content out of the gate. Content, if you think about the data types, what does it make most amount of sense for content to be? A string, right? Yeah, a string. Unfortunately, it doesn't have text as an option. String encompasses both. I mean, if it was a SQL database, you would use text because you need a certain amount of size, right, in order to handle that stuff. And we're going to say required is false, but really that's not entirely necessary because it's implied. So I just did it for verbosity. Status is a little different because status should come from a collection of things, but we should enforce something. We should enforce what values they choose. We shouldn't just let them have any random value because people will do creepy, crappy crap, like put new values into select boxes and then try to push that to your friggin' form. That type of garbage happens. So you need to kind of have those validations in place. And we can actually force that rigidity by just doing type is a string. So no matter what, it has to be a string. We can set something called an enum. Enum might be new. Is anybody familiar with enums? A little bit, yeah? Enums, arrays. Essentially, they're an array of values, right? But the cool thing about an enum is it's an array of possible values, meaning that it can only be one of these values. It can't be, you can't have draft and publish and they're like, I want it to be Tom. That's not a thing. You can't choose Tom. He's not a part of the enum, right? So we're going to do an enum. Enum takes an array. And the array of values we're going to use are draft and published. And the last thing we want to do, because, like I said, people do crappy crap, if they accidentally edit it or for some reason they manage to get past and they don't submit an enum status, right? If they don't wind up submitting a status, we're going to have a default. And our default is going to be draft. A major component of frameworks is Odms. If you're working in, yes, cool. There is a property for setting a max length. I think it is literally max length. Yeah. So a common thing in frameworks is to have like an ODM, or if you're in a like Rails or something like that, you'll use something called an ORM, which is an object relational mapper made for relational databases. Same kind of idea. And the idea is that they give you a certain amount of functionality. So an ORM, for example, will immediately give you IDs on your records in a relational database, which is cool, right? They'll also give you something called timestamps. Timestamps are super important because they give you a bit of information about records. They tell you when the record was created, and they tell you the last time that record was tampered with. So the last time it was updated, right? And those timestamps are usually created at and updated at. And they're super important because they allow you to be able to do things like sort by created at, right? Which makes sense because then you can see when it was created. Or sort by updated at, right? So maybe when they moved from draft to published or something like that. So we're going to do that same idea. We're going to have timestamps. However, timestamps comes as a property on our actual Mongoose model. So right here where we have the closing curly brace, we're going to add in our options. So these options are basically settings that we're configuring for our schema, right? So we pass it in as a second object literal. And right now, the only property we're going to set is timestamps. And it's just timestamps, true. And now we have timestamps. And what will happen is Mongoose will immediately create a created at and an updated at timestamp. And every time you modify the record, it will modify the updated at timestamp, which is super handy. Now, because we're dealing with drafts and published, it would be very convenient to pull back only blogs that are draft status or only blogs that are published status. And we can do that by creating something called a query helper. What a query helper is it's a method that you define on your model that you can access using the model's name. So you could do something like blog schema.drafts, and it will return back all the drafts for you. or blog schema.publish, and then we return back all the published blogs for you. So we're going to write two wonderful helpers just to make our lives a little simpler. And I'll even add a little query helper. So we create helpers by first referencing the schema object, which is blog.schema, not schema. And this is a query helper, so we have to access the query property to do this. And then we give our helper a name. So I'm going to call it drafts because that makes sense. That becomes equal to a function, and this is important. You have to do function because arrow functions maintain the context of the current object they're in, and unfortunately we need the object to be blog scheme. We can't have the object to be the current body that we're in. It won't work out for us. So we want it to be the the blog scheme object. And the reason why is because we're going to do our first actual Mongoose query. We're going to return this dot, and I want to access all blogs that are published. So it's where, right? And some of this is going to seem very familiar, right? Just like relational database, right? My record, where, blah, right? So this is kind of the equivalent to select all from blogs where, and we give it an object, and the object takes keys and values. The keys are the attributes of your model that you want to query. And we're going to query status. And we're looking for values that have published. And that's basically it on that one.
That would be drafts.
Sorry, it should be drafts. That's 100% true. Drafta. Sorry, not drafts. Drafta. Because you want the value that goes in, the enum value. I'm going to duplicate this. No. You can. There are ways, but yeah, we're not going to. Because the enum is case sensitive, we're actually using that to kind of make it more rigid, right? But yes, you can definitely do queries that are case insensitive. It's entirely possible. We'll wind up doing that actually at some point. Okay, so published will be the next one. And I will change this to published. Now when I hit Command S, it's going to format this, and I'm just waiting for you guys to type it out before I hit Command S. All right. Cool. Okay. Now, there's one thing to note, though. Now that we have these query helpers, we need to make modifications to two files. Does anybody know what those two files are? I want to be able to get all drafts, and I want to be able to get all published, and I want a user to be able to do that. So I should probably create two brand new, starts with an R, routes, and then those need to point to two brand new controller actions. Yeah. So we'll add those in, but we'll probably do that next week. Last but not least, this is a middleware, right? And all middlewares have to be registered with application. This whole thing needs to be exported out. So we need to do a module.exports equals mongoose.model. We give our model a name, blog. And then we pass it the actual schema. And that's it. We have a model. All right, who's still typing? No? We're good? Cool. Let's go create those controller actions for those two. Jump back over to blogs. Doesn't matter where we create them in the hierarchy. I'm just going to create them at the bottom of the page. We're going to have exports.drafts And that will be equal to the request and the response function. And then we're going to do the same thing for published. Once you have the controller actions, got to go over to the routes. So those will be under blogs.js routes, actually. Just give me a second to catch up. Cool. All right, go to blogs.js. We're going to create 2 brand new routes, and they need to go towards the top. This will be drafts. This will be published. And we're going to point them at index. Or sorry, no, drafts. I don't know why I said index. Drafts and published. What we will do, though, is use the index view to actually show those. Basically a way of filtering, essentially. We could make it more dynamic by creating a route that actually has a filter bound parameter. That would probably be a way to dry it up a little, but this works. You can actually create optional bound parameters too, where if they want to pass a bound parameter, they can. You just do the :id with a question mark after it, and it becomes optional. All right, we got 15 minutes. I think we could do it. Is anybody still typing? Okay. Because what we want to do next is actually add the controller logic. For the views, we're going to cheat and we're going to copy them out of the lesson plan. For the controller logic, I want to type out. Good? Anybody not good? Cool. All right, let's do the views real fast. If you open up the lesson plan, scroll to where the views are, you'll see the first views. Views, blogs, index.pug. Copy that. Jump over to views. Views, blogs, index.pug, and paste it in. I'll explain these in a little while. Jump back. Go to views, blogs, show pug. Copy it. Jump back, go to show pug, and paste it in place. And then do the same thing with new. New's a little bigger because it's got a form in it. Go to new, and paste. And I will explain these so that you guys understand what's happening, because there's some actual interpolation logic in there too. Okay. So I'm just copying those from the lesson plan, so that's what you guys are going to do.
It's just the 3, right?
Just the 3. Just new, index, and show. So the cool thing is we don't need this routes.js file open anymore because it's done. Blogs.js is done, so we can close it. Blog.js, our schema, is complete as well, so we can close it. And the only file we're going to be working in now is blogs controller. So I want to render the new view to our application so that you can actually fill it out and do the form thing, right? I don't need to connect to the schema because I don't need any data from the schema. I don't need any records. This is the simplest of all the views we will create. It is simply res, and you'll remember this from pages, .render, right? And it takes one mandatory argument, which is the path to the view. The path to our view is blogs new. And then it takes one optional argument. And the optional argument will actually pass something known as locals. What locals are is they're variables that become available to only the view. So when you pass the variables to the view now has access to those variables and can use it within its view as a variable. And the way we do that is we pass an object as the second argument. And in the object, it's simply key and value, and you can literally make them up. The one we are going to use is title, and it's going to be equal to a new blog post. And the kind of cool thing about this, we called our view new, but we could call our view form. And we could use the same form for the new and the edit. And based on us passing parameters, we could auto-populate that same form. We don't need to create a whole new form, right? We just use the same view and just give it some more, some different logic. All right? Do this to shrink it up. Anybody still typing that out? No? Yep? Okay. Give me a second. Then we're going to open the view and go see if this crap actually works. I definitely feel your pain. The Mongoose lessons are 2 of the longest lessons. But I mean, if you can't create data, what's the point? Right? You need to be able to add data. But I feel your pain. All right. Plus, I mean, it's 7:30. It's like an hour before I go to bed usually. Because I get up so friggin' early. It's not because I'm old. Fuck you guys. All right, let's jump over to our terminal. It should still be listening on the port. We haven't done any changes to really make any issues. No daemon will just keep updating itself. I don't have any errors, so that's usually a good sign. I'm going to jump over to my browser. I'm going to close a whole whack of stuff that's open that doesn't need to be open. There we go. Close all that crap. All right, I'm going to open up a new browser window, localhost 4000, enter, awesome. I already created you the menu item, so you can just literally click on it and click new blog, and if everything is hunky-dory, off we go. Yay, form. Cool, doesn't go anywhere, but we have a form. I mean, you can click submit, but it's not going to do nothing. It'll just spin forever. So like I said, in order for us to view blogs, we need to be able to create blogs. This is only half of the equation. What's the last half of the equation? The create controller action, right? That's the last piece. So if you look at the lesson plan, you'll notice there's this wonderful, what do you call that, diagram? Let's say diagram. And it shows you the actual process of how this works. User navigates to the new resource, fills out their form, right? When they post the form, it's going to take the resources and send them off to this controller action, this blue controller action you see here. That's going to go to our controllers. It's going to write the resource to our Mongo database. And then the last piece is it's going to redirect to our index view. And all of this sounds more complex than it is. It's actually quite simple. So let's jump back over to our Visual Studio. Scroll down to where we have exports.create, and let's create our create logic. So before we do that, actually, we need to do one very important step. We need to import our Mongoose model, because currently we don't actually have our Mongoose model, and we definitely need it in order for this to work. Yeah, so this looks like this. It's const blog equals require, and then the path to the model. And that gives us our blog model. That's basically our connection to our Mongoose or Mongo database. Allows us to do the creates that we want to do. Incidentally, if you're a person that likes vanilla kind of things, you can write vanilla Mongo queries. It's painful, but you can definitely do it. And you can do it still using Mongoose. You can actually run raw commands. All right? So that gives us our Mongo blog collection that we now have access to, and we can go ahead and write to it. If you scroll down to create, we can now use this. All right. The logic is blog, so the Mongo database that we're actually working with, right, our collection. I want to create a new collection, or a new document, sorry. So it's create, not 0, there we go. This gets passed an object containing our parameters. Now here's what's really cool. In the form that we have, I've actually already assembled the form so that when you fill it out, it passes the thing in properly titled parameters, which makes life very simple for you. However, in order for this to work, we're going to need a new node module. Now, it's already installed. You already have it available to you. You just have to require it. And it's called the body parser. And the body parser is extremely important because it's basically how we're able to actually process our stuff. So let me find the app.js file because I always forget how to add it. Oh, you know what? I'll just open it up. Takes me 1 second to do. There we go. Yes, here it is. Right. I'm going to copy that and paste it because I tend to forget it. There we go. This is going to go underneath our app is equal to express, and we're going to paste it in here. So you guys can read that and type it out. So the body parser, basically what it does is it takes the request body or the response body. It will take either one of them. It converts them into JSON objects, right? And then makes that available to you inside your controller action as an actual object, instead of you having to try to parse the query string, right? It makes everything a lot easier to work with. Where it says app.use bodyparser.json, that's the format that we want to format our actual objects into. I think XML is an option, and there's also like a raw option as well. But JSON is just much easier to work with because, I mean, we're in JavaScript, might as well work with JavaScript. And the URL encoded option, basically what that means is when you get request strings that have parameters inside those, like query parameters, it'll convert those for us. And once you're done, go ahead and save that. Once we're done that, go ahead and open up the blog's new .pug view so I can show you how this kind of works. All right, I'm going to just, why are you preparing to record? You were already recording. Because I hope you were. Ugh. I guess we'll find out. All right, who's still typing? I want to open up the Pug screen. Okay, cool. Command P, new.pug, bam. What you'll notice is I formatted the names on each one of my inputs. So this is the input, right? This is the class name for that input. So it's just a CSS class. Inside these parentheses is where we put our attributes. And you'll notice I have my name attribute, just like you would if you were writing this from raw HTML. If you're ever confused about what you're seeing here, you can literally capture it, go to that HTML to Pug, paste it in the Pug side, and it will populate the HTML on the left side so you can actually see what the HTML is. All right, so basically what's happening is I have called it blog, slip, with a set of brackets and title. Basically what this will do is it creates an object called blog with a property called title. Whatever their value is that they put in the input becomes the value of that property. So I have blog.title, blog.content, and blog.status. The reason why I do it in this format instead of just doing title, content, and status is because if I ever have like nested collections or anything like that, I would start with the nested collection. So if I want to add the author to this piece, I could do author, name, author, age, author, whatever, right? And I could have all those pieces in as well. Makes it a lot easier to work with. All right, so that's going to create a JSON structure. The JSON structure is going to be called blog. It's going to have 3 properties, title, content, and status. What blog.create is looking for is a JSON structure with title, content, status, and 3 values. So because that's literally what I'm writing at the other end, and that's what I'm getting returned by the body parser, I can plug that in as my values directly into the create action in my controller. So that looks like this. request, because that's what it's coming from, is the request object. Because it is a post request, it's .body. If it was a get request, it would be .params. And last is the name of all of those, like the object encompassing those three properties, which we call blog. So it's just blog. Okay. So once again, just so you fully understand what's happening is the request that's coming from the user. Body is our form. It's literally the form values, right? Blog is this property. That's where it's coming from. So if I called that Bob, then it would be request.body.bob, right? Cool. Now, this currently assumes that it will create, but that's not, that's the perfect world. Remember promises. Well, Mongoose uses promises. It utilizes promises to be able to tell you that, I promise I'm going to do something. It might not be the correct thing, but I do promise that I'm going to do something, right? So what we can do is we can divide that promise into two actions. If the promise is resolved and everything is good, we can put it into a then action and perform an action based on that. If it's a fail, then we can catch the error and spit the error out to our console. So let's do a .then. And then I'm also going to add the .catch underneath. When Mongoose actually creates a model, it will pass an argument to the callback. However, we don't really care about it. We're not going to do anything with it. So I'm going to create a set of empty parentheses, a hash rocket, and a set of curly braces there. Because then takes a callback as its argument. Catch also takes a callback. However, it will actually, Mongoose will actually take the error and pass it as the argument to that callback. So I want to catch that argument, and I'm going to store it in error, ERR, or whatever you want. Doesn't have to be error. And that'll be hash rocket and a set of curly braces. So still a callback, but just a callback with a parameter, right? Cool. Like I said, when we actually create one successfully, all I want to do is redirect back to index. So to do that, inside the body of the callback, so I'm going to put my cursor in between those parentheses, hit enter. Inside that body, I'm going to redirect, and I call that on response. So it's response, or res.redirect, and then I give it a path, and I think /blogs is the best path. If I get an error back, all I want to do is console log the error to the terminal for now. Next week, we'll build in Flash, which will actually allow us to actually add messages to the user and be able to warn them that something bad has happened. For now, we're just going to spit it out to the console, which only really does us any favors. The error will actually be suppressed, which means it won't go to the browser. So we're going to do console.log. I'm going to use some backticks in there. Give myself parentheses. And it's going to be error in capital letters, $ and curly braces, error. And save that. What is it freaking out about? What are you mad about? More than one blank line not allowed. Ew. It also doesn't like all of my semicolons. It gets really annoyed about the semicolons, which is so weird because strict mode actually requires semicolons. We'll do these two steps, call it a night. Okay. Anybody still typing that out, the create? Yes? Are we still typing out create? Barry? Yes? Okay. Everybody's good? Dog fur on me. All right. Let's check terminal. I mean, it says it's okay. We'll find out in a second. Jump back over to our blog. I'm just going to click refresh. I don't see any errors. Check terminal. No errors. Okay, cool. Let's create something. Title. My super awesome first blog post. Content. Man, this content block sucks. Can't wait for hashtag what you see is what you get editor. Can't wait for the WYSIWYG editor. Proud number for life. I mean, you don't have to type all that. You can literally just type ASDF. I don't really care. And then you can choose your status, draft or published. I'm going to leave it on draft because I'm not ready to publish this wonderful blog. And then I'm going to click submit. And this is where we find out whether everything goes, tits up or whatever. So submit. Do things. It says it's doing things. You see how it's turning and turning and turning and turning? That's usually a sign that it's stuck. That means it's gone somewhere. It's trying to do something, but something has caused it to get stuck. So my guess, because we didn't redirect from our catch, we're not doing anything from our catch, we're not returning from the catch, we're not doing anything to handle it, right? We're literally just console logging. My guess is if we open up our terminals, no, weirdly, we are not getting an error. So the next place that it might be an issue is we are trying to navigate to create. The other piece that might be a problem is it could be our route. Our route's not pointing to the correct location, right? So our route should be pointing to /blogs/create /blogs in order to get there. So I'm going to check a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check this post. I'm going to do an inspect. And I'm going to check and make sure the form action is pointing to blogs, and it is, and the method is set to post. So I know that's A-OK. Everything should be fine there. Next, I'm going to open up my blogs, or my routes, blog.blogs.js, and make sure my create is here. So I have a router.post / pointing to blogs controller.create. Okay, cool. Last but not least, I'm going to jump over here just to see if there's any other issues that I'm not seeing. So what I would like to do is, I just want to make sure we're actually hitting this page. You are here. I'll save it. That should have refreshed. Jump back over here. I'm going to click submit. It's going to spin forever. Definitely hitting that controller action because we got you are here. However, for some reason, it's not executing anything else within the controller action, which is usually not a good sign. So let me do one. Oh, I know why. I know why. Does anybody else know why? Yeah. That's it right there. We didn't make the index route. So because we haven't made the index route, it's going up here to index, and index is a blank function, which has nothing in it. So it doesn't know where to go. It doesn't know what to do. I mean, it will take us literally 10 seconds to fill that out, so why don't we just fill it out real fast? Super, super fast. All right, we're going to start with our blog model. We're going to use the find method. What find will return is all the blogs inside the database. All of them, every single one of them, which is weird because you don't usually use find that way, but that's what find does in Mongo. Once we have the blogs, we want to do a .then or a .catch. So if it fails, we want to execute the catch. If it passes, we want to do something in the then. We know then takes an argument like a callback. Because it's going to be returning back blogs, I want to store those in something. So I'm going to store them in the word blogs because that just makes sense to me. And with the catch, it will return an error. And you know what? I'm going to be super lazy and just do the super lazy version of console error. Cool. So in the curly braces between the callback on the then, we're going to do a res.render. We're going to render blogs index because we want to render the index page. And we're going to pass the second argument. Does anybody remember what that second argument actually does? What it actually gives our view? Do you remember the word? Locals. Yeah, exactly. It's going to give our view locals. So we're going to pass it blogs and a title. And we're going to call this title archive. And I will give you a second to type that out. Once that's typed out, we'll jump over and do another post. Only now we're going to have 3 posts. There are options in the schema to actually create unique posts, right? So you could use the title, for example, to be able to tell whether a post is unique or it's the same title. Ideally, when you're actually creating a blog post, you want a unique title. You don't want the titles to be the same. It's not a good idea to have the same title. It's actually better for you to edit the post from an SEO perspective and update it if that's what you want to do. Primarily because that post would already have traffic. Are we good? Anybody not good? Anybody still typing? Yeah, that works too. Totally works. All right, I'm going to jump back. First, I'm going to make sure there's no errors in iTerm. No errors. I'm going to go back to blogs. And I'm just going to click submit. Oh. There's our 3 blog posts. Nice. If you click the link, though, it will just spin forever because we haven't filled out what action. Everybody know? Show, exactly, because we haven't filled out show, which we will leave. Cool. So let's call it a night. Next week we will do show, and